The year was somewhere in the late 1800s, when the frontier still chewed men up and spat them out, and the wind carried more stories than any newspaper ever printed. Jed Callahan had spent most of his life riding the lonely sweep of the Montana Territory, a man shaped by hard miles, gunsmoke, and the kind of silence that made a person listen to things most folks never noticed. That afternoon, the plains were quiet enough to hear the distant creak of a wagon wheel, and that sound alone was strange, too slow, too struggling, too desperate. Jed reined in his horse, tilted his head, and listened again. Then he heard her, a faint cry, thin and raw, carried on the wind. He nudged his horse forward until the horizon shifted, and there she appeared, like a scene carved out of hardship itself. A pregnant woman, barefoot, shoulders bent, rope cutting across her collarbones, dragging a crooked wagon that looked ready to fall apart in the dust. Her dress was torn, wind-whipped, and her face was the color of someone who'd walked far too long under a sun that showed no mercy. She didn't see him at first. She was too focused on pulling, on surviving, on refusing to collapse, though her knees shook with every small step. Jed dismounted and walked toward her, each boot crunching the gravel. "Ma'am," he called softly, but she flinched like a hunted deer. When she finally looked up, he saw fear, exhaustion, stubbornness, and something else, grief so deep it barely had a name. She whispered that her husband was dead, buried a few miles back, taken by fever so quick she hardly had time to say goodbye. The townsfolk had refused to help, refused to offer shelter, refused even to lend a mule. They didn't want a widow with a child on the way. They didn't want trouble, so she left, dragging the last pieces of her life behind her, praying she could reach Dawson Creek before her body gave out. Jed walked closer, slow and calm, like a man approaching a wounded animal. He told her she was killing herself with that rope, but she shook her head, insisting she couldn't leave her husband's tools and the few things they still owned. She had nothing else left. He watched her legs buckle and her hands tremble as she tried once more to pull the wagon. That was when he stepped in, grabbed the rope, and said the words before she could argue. "You're coming with me." She tried to refuse, saying she didn't take charity, but Jed's tone hardened into something she couldn't push against. He wasn't offering pity. He was offering survival. Before she knew it, he'd lifted her into his saddle with a gentleness that didn't match the roughness of his hands. He tied the wagon to his horse, adjusted the harness, and made sure she was secure. The storm behind them was growing, clouds thick and heavy, swirling dust across the plains as if the sky itself demanded they hurry. Jed held her steady with one arm as he steered the horse with the other, hauling the wagon behind. She leaned against him, her breath shallow, whispering that no one had ever helped her like this. Jed didn't answer at first. He simply stared at the widening black sky and tightened his grip around her. They rode for hours through wind and grit, the storm chasing them like a wolf nipping at their heels. Jed refused to stop, even when the wagon wheels caught on. Rocks or when lightning split the sky into jagged pieces. He kept her awake, speaking softly, telling her she'd make it, telling her the baby would make it too. When the lanterns of Dawson Creek finally flickered into view, she began to cry, not from pain but from the sudden, overwhelming sense that she might live after all. Jed burst into the town, shouting for the doctor, carrying her in his arms like something priceless. The doctor rushed forward, townspeople gathering, murmuring, gasping at the sight. Hours later, when she woke in a clean bed with warm blankets around her, Jed was still sitting beside her, hat in his hands, eyes steady as a sunrise. He told her she was safe and that her baby's heartbeat was strong. She reached for him with trembling fingers, whispering that she didn't understand why he'd saved her. Jed smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came from old wounds and quiet truths. No woman, he said, should fight the whole damn frontier alone. For the first time since burying her husband, she felt the weight of the West lift from her shoulders. And for the first time in years, Jed Callahan felt something in his chest. He thought the frontier had long ago taken from him. Hope.